everyone, Heather here. I thought I'd come on and we could edit this little newborn image together. So the first thing that I normally do on my images is play my frequency separation action. If this little play button is not showing up here, you would go up to Window, and then Actions, and that will open the palette here. Alright, so once you have it in, it's just going to say HGP skin basic frequency separation, and you'll hit play. And it's going to tell you here that the gray layer is all the cloning tools, spot healing tools, and all that you want to use, and the blur layer would be softening the skin. So we'll just hit continue, and it's going to play the action. So on the blur layer, I mean, her skin is pretty much perfect already, but I'll show you how it works. I usually just select part of the skin here, and I'll go up to filter and I'll blur, Gaussian blur the skin at around 7%. And then I'll just select some more. Oops. Select her cheek. And once you've already played the blur action, you can actually hit Control-Alt-F and it'll just replay that action over top. Control-Alt-F. And I'll just keep doing that, Control-Alt-F, you know, selecting the skin and hitting that shortcut to do the skin here. So I'll hit Control-D to deselect, and just kind of show you the before and after. It's very subtle, but that's kind of what you want. You don't want to go over the top with it. Alright, and on this layer, the gray layer, is what we're going to use our spot healing tool, or this tool here, the patch tool, on, you know, bits of dry skin or little pimples and things. I mean, she doesn't have that much, so you know, she's got pretty perfect skin. But this is great for just evening everything out. Getting rid of some of those little dry spots, but yet still keeping the texture of the skin intact. Alright. You can actually use this as well on the background layers. So if you want to, you know, even out some of these folds and stuff, you can use the patch tool on that as well. And it'll just like soften them up a bit. But I'll probably go over and actually do that again. But yeah, it just kind of softens them. Alright, so once I'm done that, I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to hit Shift Control Alt E, and it'll make a new layer on top of this. And I'm going to actually take my patch tool, and I'm going to take out some of these spots here on the background. I didn't have much to do because I tried to make it as seamless as I could in camera. So that's probably the best thing to do. It cuts down on your editing. Alright, so I'm just going to actually crop this in a little bit. Maybe about right there. And the next thing I always like to do is soften the edge. So I'm going to make another layer. So Shift Control Alt E. Make a new layer here, and I'm going to take my square marquee tool, and I'm going to select like just a box around the baby here, And I'm going to invert this, and I'm going to feather it quite a bit. So I'm gonna go up to filter, I'm gonna go up to select and modify and feather the selection, and I'm gonna feather it like at 100%, I think. And then we'll go into filter, blur, and Gaussian blur. And I'm gonna go way up on this and then just kind of pull it back. So around 40%. I'm gonna unselect this, so Control D. And then I'm just gonna kind of bring down the opacity on this until I get it to a point where I like it. So around 43% looks good. All right. So I'm gonna make yet again another layer here. So I just hit Shift Control Alt E to make another layer. Let me just kind of rename my layers here. Smooth folds, soften edge, and with this one I'm gonna say camera raw on this layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this up into camera raw. So you go filter and camera raw filter. And here's the camera raw filter. So what I'm going to do is I can just see just a teensy bit of redness in her skin. So I'm just going to go up to the channel mixer here. And under saturation, I'm just going to take the reds down a little bit, as well as the oranges. And I'm going to go into luminance, and I'm going to brighten up the oranges a little bit. Okay. So I'll hit OK. So this is the before. And this is the after of the camera raw. Before, after. So it's just kind of brightening up her skin a little bit, as well as taking out those red tones. It's maybe just a little too much, so I might bring it down to about 80%. And that's good there. All right, so the next thing I want to do is fix this little toe. The outfit was just a teensy bit big on her, so I'm going to fix that in the hat and kind of make it just fit her head a little bit more. So I'm going to go Shift Control Alt E again to make a new layer, and I'm going to rename this one Liquify, and we will liquefy her. So we'll go Filter and Liquify. And I'm just going to kind of bring in this little toe a bit. It's just an awkward shape. And I don't want it to look too big. I'm just doing little motions, a little motion at a time. I'm not going overboard. Okay, and then I'm just going to bring in the hat a little bit on the sides here, because it was just a teensy bit big on her. Alright, so we'll preview that before and after, and I'll hit OK. Okay, so since I took out a lot of red in her skin, her little lips and cheeks are not as rosy as I normally like the baby's cheeks to look. So I'm going to actually do a solid color paint layer, and we'll bring it up to like a nice rosy pink tone. Maybe a little more like that. And we're going to change the blending mode to color, and we're going to bring this down to maybe 20%. And I'm going to click on the layer mask here, and I'm going to invert it. So I'm going to hit Control I to invert that. And we will bring up our brush. We want to make sure that the hardness on the brush is at 0 and the opacity is at 100. And you can always bring the opacity on the layer down more if you need to. So I'm just going to brush that on. Oh, obviously I definitely need to bring this down. This is up way too high. So we will bring this down to maybe, let's just see what it looks like on here. Bring it down to about 5%. Okay, and I'm going to copy this layer, and then I'm going to refill the layer mask. So all I did was hit Control and Backspace to completely fill this in with black. Alright, so I'm going to make my brush smaller and just kind of go in on her little lips here. And the reason I put these on separate layers is because the lips are darker, sometimes it can be more intense than on the cheeks. So I'm just going to do them separately and just see if I want to either take it down or bring it up a bit more. Maybe I'll bring it up a little to like 8%. Okay, so that's the before and after. On those, it's very subtle. Let's see if we want to bring the cheeks up at all. Maybe a little. Okay. All right. So I'm going to take a snapshot right here. So right now, this was the totally before we did anything. Oops. Just gonna pull that in. That's before we've done anything, and this is now. And then the next thing that I normally like to do is just kind of sharpen up the eyes a little bit. So we'll make a new layer again. Shift, Control, Alt, E. And I'm just going to go up to Filter and Sharpen and Unmask Sharpen. Okay, we'll put that at about 126, I think. Okay. You know, I'm kind of liking how that looks on all of it. And I'm just noticing I missed a teeny little spot and hair on her eye here. So I'm just gonna go in and take it out with a small brush. One other thing that I do like to do is just kind of add in some dodge and burn a little bit just on the baby. So the way I do that, just a quick way, is with curves. And I'll usually make one curves layer, I'll bring up the midtones just a touch, and then invert this, so Control I. And we'll call this Dodge. And we'll make another one, another curves. Bring this down. Invert that, Control I. Call this Burn. Oops. Alright, so now I just take my brush, and with a white soft brush, I will just go over the highlights. Highlighted areas. Okay, and then with the burn, I'll go over the darker areas. Okay, that's the before, that's the after. And we'll just flatten this, so just go to the background layer, right click and say flatten image. And again, we'll go into the history and just take a picture here. So this is the before, and this is the after. Alright, I hope you've enjoyed this simple newborn edit, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks, bye.